so I'm going to make a quick introduction, and they're going to tell us about what they do and their background. To my immediate left is Blair Brandt. He's a co-founder and CEO of Realty. Next to Brandt is Maureen Sullivan, which is the president of Runway. And next to Maureen, I have Umang Dua, who is the co-founder and COO of Handy. And last but not least, at the end, we have Luke Sherwin, who's a co-founder and chief creative officer of Casper. Once again, we're pleased to have you here. We can't wait to hear about you and what you do. And maybe we can start from you, Maureen, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about.
Ladies first.
Yes.
Love being the girl on the panel. So I'm Maureen, and I actually started my career. I'm a Stanford undergrad. Started my career at Google. It feels like 100 years ago, looking at you all, like an old lady in the room. And worked at Google for 5 years, and then my boss at Google went to be the CEO of AOL. Your grandma's internet company, not even your mother's internet company, probably your grandma's internet company, and was at AOL for 6 years, and then recently just took this role at Rent the Runway about 6 months ago. So I'm new to Rent the Runway, and I oversee our engineering, product, creative, and retail teams at the company.
Great, thank you. So, Blair?
Sure. Basically, I was at the University of Richmond, kind of giving you my brief career at the University of Richmond, when I was asked by a friend to help find an apartment in New York City, and we had a nightmare experience looking for apartments for him, and created a company to help people relocate to New York called Next Step Realty. That was back in 2010. Since then, we've grown substantially, and enjoy thousands of customers a year now moving to New York. This spring we've been on a panel tour speaking at a variety of campuses to students, which we've really enjoyed. And I'm sure I'll dive into more detail during the panel.
Great, thank you. And Umang?
Sure. So I'm from India originally, but went to Amherst. Had no idea I would work in technology, studied political science. Left, had no idea what I would do after college. Stumbled into working on a startup. Didn't even know it was a startup at the point. It was just like working with a friend and thought this was a good idea, which was not Handy, which was something else. Did that for a year and a half or so. Then worked in consulting. Freaked out and was like, I should get a real job. I don't know what's happening. So worked at McKinsey for a bit. Ended up at business school. So I went to business school. Did a year at business school. Again, got a little impatient in between business school, left, and that's when I started Handy with my co-founder, and it's been 3.5, 4 years since.
Thank you.
Yeah, similar to Umang there, except no real job.
You're stressed about it?
Yeah, or business school. Either one. I graduated in 2012. Two of my friends from college, we tinkered in our sophomore, junior, senior years, took advantage of Brown University's liberal, what's the word? Pass-fail as well as independent study structure. So we took got a lot of credit for businesses and independent study. Graduated, had a business for about a year, didn't go so hot, got into an accelerator with it, met another co-founder, started Casper. This is in late 2013. We launched in 2014 and now we're about 160 employees in New York, selling kind of a whole dream of trying to do for sleep what Nike did for exercise or Whole Foods did for organic food, really creating it into the new next lifestyle frontier.
Great.
Well, thank you. Princeton students have a lot of options when they graduate. They can go consulting, they can go to investments, all kinds of stuff.
You all have built great companies, and I'm wondering, did you always know you're going to build a company? How did you end up doing that? And tell us a little bit more detail. How about you?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was at the University of Richmond, I applied for an internship my junior year at Lazard,
and this was in 2000, so I'm going to age myself now, this was in 2008, and the economy was still recovering. Lazard had a boutique training program, I think about 30 summer analysts who would come in for the investment banking program, and I got the job in February, and then in May we were at what Richmond calls Beach Week. Everyone goes, I think you guys do Beach Week here, right? Princeton goes to Myrtle Beach in May, and so I was at that, and whatever you guys call it. Yeah, the Princeton version of that. I was there, and I literally remember pulling up to the house that we all rented, and I opened up my cell phone to, I think, take a picture of it, and my first email was that the program had been canceled, so it was kind of a rough way to start the week. But like many people coming up through college, you definitely don't expect to be starting a business, but kind of things happen for a reason. I think that for me, what that said to me was there really is no security no matter what industry you pick. People can look at different points in time. You can look at different industries and you can say, oh, well, this is such a safe industry for me to go into right now because of these trends. But the world is frankly changing so fast, and at that point, even what was, I think, one of the most coveted investment banking internships of the year, which was I was told was the most secure job opening available, turns out was no longer available. That's when I personally decided that I was just going to pursue something that I loved, because why not? I mean, you're not guaranteed to get a paycheck in any industry, so try to kind of create your own paycheck. And by coincidence, I was kind of unemployed and upset, and I was down in Florida, and I met a luxury real estate broker named Christian Engel, who asked me to be his assistant, get paid $10 an hour from like 6 in the morning until 10 at night to do everything for him. And I hadn't thought of that as my dream job, but I took it, and I ended up learning a lot about the real estate industry and about how real estate brokerage is supposed to operate. And so that kind of fast forwarding, that was really helpful for me, because when I went to go, actually a friend of mine was graduating from Princeton, when we went to New York City to go look at apartments for him, he had gotten a job at Rothschild Investment Bank, and we experienced this 3-week rental nightmare where we looked at 30 apartments, half of them were fake, and then we finally found one he liked, and he had to hand over a 2-month broker fee to this random kind of stranger. That's when I put 2 and 2 together. I wanted to start my own business. I found an industry or an opportunity that clearly was under-servicing its customers. The customers did not have a voice or a service. And so it happened serendipitously. I did not plan to start a business, but at the same time, I think that being open-minded about it helped me execute at the time, because when I realized this in New York, I didn't think about it for 2 or 3 months. We were able to, the next day, start launching the business and things like that. So kind of a combination.
So I'm probably the least entrepreneurial of the folks up here. I mean, I had a pretty, Google, it was 2004 when I joined Google, so pre-IPO, but just about to IPO, and obviously high growth company. But I would say, for me, and what's worked for me career-wise, is I never had a defined job. And I think you want to go to a place, I find in a lot of people that I hire or mentor, they're like obsessed with job clarity, and actually without job clarity comes opportunity, right? And so I think it worked for me to kind of always have a role that was vague or cross team, which always feels a little scary, like, oh God, I gotta work across teams, but that's actually where you can develop and actually refine your skills. And I think sometimes the least clear jobs feel a little scary, but that's early on in your career, push into that, because you kind of don't know exactly what you're great at yet. And every company's different, even just like product organizations. Product means something different in a lot of different companies and how it functions, right? Sometimes it's more engineering driven, other times it's more creative driven, other times the customer experience team. So I think not being too narrow really helped me, kind of expand probably what I would have ended up doing if I'd taken kind of a more traditional path at a company that kind of did one thing. So obviously high growth, an industry that excites you and you love what the company's doing, and then the role can evolve and grow from there.
So after the first experience I had that I sort of stumbled into, honestly, at that point I knew I wanted to do something And I think putting yourself out there and just doing new things, that's the only way you'll figure out what you want to do, what you don't want to do. If you're lucky to know it, that's great, and you find it straight off the bat, that's fantastic. But I think contrasting that first experience I had, which the business didn't even pan out, it didn't go anywhere too far, and then the consulting experience where I knew literally month one, like, I was counting down the clock to leave for something else. And it honestly sucks being in a job, I think, where you're like, all right, I'm going to do this for X time, and then I know I'm going to leave. Because then, like, I mean, what are you working to? Like, it's not a great feeling, I think. So I think if at any point you're just like, all right, I'm going to do this for X years, and maybe that's the right thing to do, so I'm not saying don't do it, but I think you should definitely pause at that moment and be like, why have you already decided, like, a month in, or even before you've taken the job, you're going to do it for this defined period of time? Because maybe that's not the right thing to do then. I think for me it was that experience, which was when I started Handy, it was like, whatever I do now, I just want to do it. Maybe I won't do it a few years from now, maybe I'll stop liking it, but I don't want to go into something thinking that this is a stepping stone to something else. Like, why can't this just be it? And it may not be, obviously, but I think for me it was more of that feeling, which wasn't like, you know, I'm destined to start something or I have to start something. It was just like, I want to do something that I know I'll enjoy from day one, and I won't be thinking about what's next. I'll be like, this is what I do right now.
Again, kind of similar, a little bit similar. I think for me, a lot of it was, I think that there's something, I actually, before college, I went to school in the UK, and something that it takes, like, living in the UK to see what's special about the US in some ways, that there's a valorization of youth here. Like, when you graduate college, you know, even before college, you know, people talk about where you're going to college, but there's this moment from your late teens to your, I don't know, we won't arbitrarily define the point where it ends.
Please
but,
don't.
yeah, where
yeah. I don't even know what you're saying. Yeah.
Where youth is exciting, and with the right tweaks, the right kind of faking it until you make it, you can leverage, I think, the shotgun effects of your lack of a record. I think there's something some people don't see as consequential is branding yourself as a peon. You know, essentially working. I'm being drastic, but working for a big company in a highly defined role with constraints post college. You've added to your resume as someone who does that. And I think when I and my two friends were evaluating what to do post college, and I think in positions of extreme luck and privilege to be able to go to New York relatively easily because we had family there and were able to live in New York for very little, and none of us actually inherited student loans, so there was kind of a risk appetite that was bigger. But recognizing that that element of sort of youth as a feather in your cap, and showing that, you know, you believe you can change the world. And we got very good at pitching VCs. We did it for a year and a half. Met every single fund in New York. Had you know, every single rejection in New York. Round two, you know, failed that first company. What's your resume? Oh, we failed our first company. Oh yeah, cut you a check. And it's just like there's something amazing that happens here that I can say from perspective in the UK is that I don't think. So sort of like inexperience is something that is exciting. It doesn't always work out. You can't say like you start a company and it automatically works out. Recognize the numbers and the percentages on that, and they're not always favorable. But there's an opportunity cost to not doing it and not doing it straight away. And that was something that we evaluated very carefully coming out of college. And you know, I actually had to convince one of my peers who was on a slightly more defined track to do the startup one. And now he hasn't looked back, but he's my co-founder now. But there were moments where, you know, you have that sort of equilibrium to decide on.
So I'm gonna go back to you because you just said something that sort of leads into the next set of questions. And we say that entrepreneurship is about solving problems and sometimes getting over our failures, moving forward, learning from them. So is there one example, a big challenge you had that you really had to sort of learn from, move forward, or something that did not work?
Yeah, I mean, I can go like, I'll try and go slightly more macro because other than the just like mattress didn't fit in the box.
Well, that's actually
looking at the difference between my first company and second company was the realization of that to build a good working environment, like if you're thinking of scale and growth, building the environment which puts you as a founder in a position of underwriting others and in a position of sort of recognizing your own limitation and stupidity on certain things. If you can sort of, instead of being, there's that Steve Jobs quote of being the conductor, you know, rather than being conductor, almost just like be the architect of the room, but let the orchestra
Play on its own.
Play on its own. I think for us it was figuring out an environment where people can thrive, where they're intellectually stimulated, and most importantly, pulling ourselves out of micromanaging things. And that was literally the distinction between our first company, where we were maniacal micromanagers, and the second company where we learned that lesson. So, pretty concrete one, I think.
How about you?
Same thing. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. I mean, I think even like today, you're making decisions that honestly with startups, because there is no like playbook. And sometimes you wish there was. There are so many days where I'm just like, shit, I wish I knew. Like so many answers and so many decisions you're just making in so much like gray space constantly. And it's with such speed that it's honestly, you don't even know when you're making the mistake. Sometimes something goes wrong like months later, and you're like, how did that metric move this way or that way? And so I think one of the lessons just in terms of failure, like so many things we've probably made like a series of like errors over the last like 3.5 years that to some extent got us here, because obviously some things we reversed, some things we learned from, some things we still don't even know what the counterfactual on it would have been. But I think one of the lessons that we've just learned as a business, and obviously as a founder working on this, is I think you just try with a startup, you never get stuck in indecision. Like one of the things we constantly tell ourselves is like, you know, just making a decision is better than making no decision whatsoever. And you try and prepare and you try and get all the facts and whatever you need to make that decision, but there's honestly only that much. You're making so many, like, if it was easy, people would have done it before, right? And if there was a playbook, like there would be 12 other companies at the same stage doing exactly the same thing as you. So you're already in a space, I think, where there is no right or wrong answer lots of times, and you should be open to making mistakes. I don't know if you guys read that. There was a Jeff Bezos, like, Amazon shareholder letter like a week ago, which was fantastic. You all should just read it. It's about how Amazon's like not good. What they're the best at is failure, and they've just over the course of like, it was like, what does I forget, like what does Prime, their regular like e-commerce, and AWS have in common? Like nothing. Those are 3 different businesses, but how can they possibly succeed so well? And he was like, just because of the appetite for failure at Amazon so large that they let them run, lots of stuff failed, these things bubbled up. And I think that's just a great, like, it's something obviously we don't do as well as Amazon, but I think it's a pretty good model to follow.
I mean, I'll take that almost to a more personal level and say that with the same thing that works in building, you know, really successful companies and being open in that iteration, apply that to yourself as an individual. So if I look back on kind of the first part of my career, I was always signing up to do things that I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured they're gonna let me try, I'm gonna, you know, go for it, right? Which was great. But I think there is a little bit of fear of feedback or asking like, am I doing this right? Because you're like, I don't know, I better just do it. And I think, you know, I have a simple model with my team of just like, asking people constantly, what should I keep doing? What should I stop doing? You know, what am I doing that I should do more of, right? And just being open as a person. And you guys are probably, you know, you're all very successful people. You're here at this amazing place. You've been the top your whole life, and you will continue to, you know, achieve awesome things. So sometimes we forget how important it is to like get constant feedback from people and kind of understand, even though you're phenomenal, we can all get better, and you know the feedback can come from all different places, not just your boss, but you know, and just think about the other side. Think about someone asking you that question and how much you appreciate that they value, you know, your opinion, right? So I think sometimes when you're so busy doing and making your career, you kind of forget that it's okay to check in with people and ask how you can get better.
I think for us, when we discovered that so basically if you look at kind of the relocation industry, which is the industry that we're in, and I'll use a bit more of a corporate example, but where there's a lot of services right now in the mid and senior level. So for example, if you're a vice president or managing director or partner at Goldman Sachs and they're going to relocate you from London to New York or from Miami to New York, you're going to have this full service experience. Goldman's going to pay for it and it's going to go very, very smoothly. So when we found out that there was this gap in the entry-level relocation market, meaning that people coming out of universities, MBA, medical school, law schools, that they didn't have that same type of services and that same type of efficiency when moving to big cities, what we tried to do is just put our name in as many places as we could. And so we ended up being, and this works for a company like Handy, by the way, who is in 28 cities, but for us, we immediately were like, all right, we're going to just open up shop in 28 cities. And so we started contracting real estate brokers in these 28 cities who we had pre-qualified. And so you're sitting here at Princeton and you get a job at any of those 30 cities, you could immediately go to the nextsteprealty.com, click on the city, and be connected with the broker. But of course, we made basically no money because we were getting referral fees from these real estate agents all over the world. And then we also lost total control of the brand experience. And most importantly, we lost touch with the customer because, as Maureen and I were talking about on the way here, if things went really well with the customer and that real estate broker, we never heard from the customer again because now they have a real estate broker. And if things didn't go well, we just got an email with a complaint like, this broker wasn't as good as you said they would be. I did not find a flat in London in one day, blah, blah, blah. So we eventually had a meeting in 2012 with our shareholders after 2 years after founding the company, kind of a soul-searching situation, and we decided to flip the whole thing on its coin to immediately remove ourselves from 29 of the 30 cities and put all of our resources into New York City where over 90% of our demand was. So I think what we learned, the biggest failure that we experienced was growing way, way too fast and not understanding that what you always need to do in business is identify the most concrete customer base you possibly can and then service that customer base as strongly as you can because you're only as good as the brand. And so now we're in full control of the client experience from the time that you go to the website, you talk to customer service, you meet with your broker, you get in the car, sign your lease, come to our parties after you sign your lease. All of those things are controlled by my team. And so what we learned from it, to answer your question, is we learned to be extremely adaptive. And this goes back to what you said about decision making. You can't just say, all right, well, we're in 29 cities, we're in 30 cities right now, and New York is where most of our clients are moving to. Let's kind of slowly figure out how we can become New York based. We just made a very risky decision to put all of our eggs in the New York basket, and it's definitely paid off. You're gonna, as a person and as a company, if you guys join small businesses or start your own businesses, failure is not possible, it's guaranteed. And it's guaranteed on a frequent basis. And I probably have devastating failures on at least bi-monthly basis. Like totally devastating failures where you think that you can't go on in your role or the company's going to have a big problem in 3 months from now. So I think the smartest thing to do is to anticipate those and understand that what's going to separate you from the next person, this person sitting next to you, is how quickly do you get up from that failure and how well do you get up. You got to do it fast, and you've got to do something extremely impressive. I saw this question on the list and I was like, well, how many things? I could talk about this for days. The amount of failures that you have, and all of the good things that happened in my career all came out of the worst moments in my life. If I look back to when I rented a flat in Madrid when I was studying abroad and we lost our security deposit to a bad landlord and I had organized this whole thing, I had a moment where I realized young renters around the world need help with these decisions, moving to cities, renting apartments. I didn't want other people to get scammed like I got scammed. Getting let go from Lazard and having to go get this job as an assistant at a local real estate brokerage. Just understand at your age that if you can pick right now in your head one or two of the failures that you've had, or if you have some in the coming months or years, those are the moments that are going to make you. Like Kanye West has this expression. He had a fashion show and like 10 people showed up. Whether you like him or not, he made a good point. He said, no, this is good. Like this is good that no one showed up because now I can figure out exactly what I need to do to be successful. Like I can map out a strategy right now and just start from scratch. Like there's no better place to start than at the bottom. So take those moments, be a bottom feeder, take those opportunities, and really inspire yourself to overcome them.
Right. Actually, there is a Princeton professor that wrote a book on it's called the other F word. It's all about failure.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
And
popular.
as long as they're not fatal, I mean, if it's really bad, you might be screwed. Don't get me wrong, but
You'll survive.
enough failure, just enough failure is exactly what you need to succeed. Too much, you're done for.
Well, let's talk about a topic that's actually very, very close to my heart. We as investors, we invest in people, and we say that A people hire A types, B people hire C people. So it's very important to us as investors to get the type, sort of the right leader in the company. So I want to hear your opinion about leadership and what really makes a great leader, even in a small startup. Umang, how about we start from you and tell us a little bit about your perspective on leadership and what really makes a right leader in a company.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not gonna keep saying, but like what he was talking about, how you just learn, right? Like, so even for me, this has been a massive learning experience, like insane. Like I probably learned more than anyone else of them. Hopefully everyone's learning, but I've learned, like I can't imagine going through a more, like any sort of, no school, no business school, no nothing. I think I could have learned the amount I've learned over the last 3 years. And a big part of that has been learning like what you're good at, where you need other people to support around you, let's say micromanaging what you can do yourself, what you shouldn't do yourself. And that honestly has come, I think the biggest thing, and everyone, a huge thing in Silicon Valley is just learning, how the learning never stops, and that to me it's kind of amazing. Like I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I don't even tweet. I just read like all these like, all these other like people writing their essays and blogs and things like that. And it's amazing how self-reflective so many successful people are. It's just amazing. It's like the busiest people somehow have created this time to like self-reflect, which is like, you mail people and the busiest people also like sidetrack, will email you back within 5-10 minutes. They've just got these habits that I think they've just ingrained in themselves as that's what they do as leaders. And they have this capacity to reflect. And I think that to me has been the single biggest thing. It's not like a good leader does X or Y or Z. It's like every period of time, like every month, like you have the ability to look back and say, shit, I really messed those 6 things up, or I got way too involved in something that I shouldn't have, or these are the 3 things I'm working on, that I think will get me to the next level or will get the company to the next level, and how I'm tracking against those 3 things. So I think I don't know, it's not the most like common answer, but I think being self-reflective is like probably the single biggest thing that to me makes a good leader.
Maureen?
It's like an essay answer to business.
I mean, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great leaders, and I always feel like, a lot of it is like you're gonna watch a lot of managers, executives in your career and like take little things that they each do, and there is no perfect person. Like you're gonna find your own leadership brand and how you like to lead. There's no one way to do it. My mental check for myself when I'm, interacting with my team is like, would I want my boss to do this? Like it's midnight last night, I'm stressed about something, I want to send a fire email to 7 people because it's what I want to do right then, but would I want that email from my boss when I wake up at 6 a.m.? So, we're all human, and lead the way that, everyone has a boss, right? Even the CEO has a boss and shareholders or the board, right? So, just these basic principles of, what really motivates people and how people like to work. I think also realizing that, communication, whether you're in a 5-person company. We just did this big thing in New York called Project Entrepreneur, where we had a ton of female entrepreneurs come to New York and kind of come with a live pitch competition last week, and we did 2 days of workshop, and it was fascinating to me. Some of them don't even have employees in their businesses yet, and like how important communication is, and I think you can always get better at how you communicate, and as a leader, people expect flexibility of communication. Some people like one-on-ones, other people want to be in a group and solve it together. So I think just knowing that communication, if you want to manage people, that is going to be the secret sauce of being a great leader, is how well you communicate. Because if you can't communicate well, then you can't motivate a team to go after a big vision. So sometimes the simplest stuff, like in all relationships, communication is pretty important. But I would think about the best leaders or teachers or people you've interacted with. They're phenomenal communicators at their core.
Great. Blair, how about you?
I think the biggest thing is passion, and this goes back to if you're going to join a company or if you're going to start your own company, you do really have to be passionate about what it is you're doing. And I know that sounds really cliched, but I've seen so many people go into things that were kind of more centered around making money, and it never works because it's 24 hours in a day. You've got your whole life in front of you, especially where you guys are right now, and life gets hard, and you need to be truly passionate about what you're doing. So there's obviously things like communicating and being open and self-reflective, but where I can take my entire team and get them really fired up is when they see how passionate I am about what we do. When they see that I really care about the service we provide to people and that I care about every single customer. For example, Maureen, my girlfriend's renting the Runway this Saturday for a wedding, and Maureen was like, well, what's her name? Maureen wants to make sure that she individually, amongst 30,000 dresses that are going out on Saturday, that she gets the right dress and that it's happy and
Well, he told me they're leaving at 6 a.m., so I'm having anxiety in the car.
she's
I hope there's not an issue with her order.
They're shipping out millions of dresses a year, and she's concerned about the customer having a legitimately good experience with the dress. Just like I want to make sure every customer finds an apartment, and Umang wants to make sure that every home is clean and that everyone's getting good sleep because of the Casper mattress. I mean, you have to care about these things because that's what's going to get the people under you to also care. So I think it's passion, and then once you are passionate about something, really choosing a great team, because the other 3 people here are managing over 100 people each, roughly. There's 140 people in their offices, so I have a team of 40, so it's a little bit smaller, but choosing the right team is going to make or break your company, and being able to work with them, because you just can't accomplish anything on your own. It truly does take a village. So you have to be a good recruiter. You really have to be like, my friend so-and-so is going to be really good at doing this, and this person at this company is going to be really good at doing this. Because you need a huge team of people to accomplish anything significant in this world. So I think finding something that you're truly passionate about, and then bringing on the right people to help you do it.
The other piece is don't wait until you're a manager to get better as a leader. So you can be a leader day one that you walk into a company. And those are the harder skills that take time. And you're always gonna have people that you have to motivate to do something who don't directly work for you. That is the nature of the world, right? So those are the softer skills that take time, and just knowing, okay, I know I'm gonna be a leader, I know I'm gonna run teams, what kind of leader do I wanna be, and start figuring out that early on before you're a manager. Being a leader is more important than being a manager.
Yeah, excellent point, because there's some companies that are 2 people, we expect them to have those type of leadership skills, at least build those up. Yeah, great. So last but not least, tell us about leadership.
I like Umang, I'm still learning, so I won't.
You should be sitting next to each other anymore.
I won't isolate a platitude, because I feel like if I said one, then there might be 8 others that are more important. And we hired leadership coaches.
Those help.
Higher leadership coaches.
Those are good.
Great.
Well, I have a few more questions, but I know the audience loves to ask another question. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to open it up to the audience, and if there's time, I can ask one question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Everyone has their own personal ambitions in addition to those of the company. And sometimes it can get pretty amorphous when the company is you, or it's a really small startup. And a lot of times your professional fate, for instance, if you have 3 to 4 failed ventures, even though you're the smartest, best entrepreneur, that might hurt you later. Or your personal well-being, if your company doesn't do well, you don't feel good. Where do you guys kind of draw a line between personal kind of ambitions and your, running a company, your company's ambitions?
It probably depends on your role at the company. Maureen's been at Runway for 6 months. When did they found the company? In
2009, late
2009. So for me, I'll just answer quickly first. I draw 0 line. For me, they are one and the same. In other words, I am not successful unless the company becomes successful at this point in time. That obviously might change, but I tie the company's success to my own, and I tie my success to the company, just because I think that you have to have an all-in mentality as an entrepreneur. If you have to have the heart, you have to have the passion, and if you have to have the wolf at your door that if this doesn't go well, it's totally on me. And that's when you co-found a company, that's certainly where you end up at, is especially publicly, and people know that it's related to you and associated with you. So for me, it's all in. They're one and the same.
Yeah, I mean, we have one of our values as a company is act like a founder. And I would say, my job is, I'm not a founder, I've only been there 6 months, right? And I've come from bigger company experiences, but my job is to get everyone in the company to act like a founder, right? Like that's the stage that we're in, is that we don't want to lose that intensity. We're getting bigger, we are a larger scale in the volume of customers we serve, but we don't want to lose that specialness that made the company, what it is. So I think, I get what you're saying, I get what you're saying, but I think most of us will tell you to kind of compete in the world we live in today, like the energy is there and people are kind of all in. I think, the question that we often get is like, how do you do that in a way where people feel like they live complete lives and, that's probably the tougher topic, right? Of just like, you can't be on overdrive all the time. So just when was the last time you talked to someone and they were like, I'm not really busy, I'm just kind of like, hey, I mean, everyone's too busy. Everyone feels like they're going 24/7. So I think it's sustainability of that energy, right? And like, how do you have a high-performing team that can act like a founder but not have founder burnout, right? And I think that's kind of the setting that we're trying to get to.
I would say though, I'm not obviously that rings true, but it's important to know what you personally want as well. Like you need to be like, everyone has a different risk tolerance, or it's not a good or bad thing. So people use this word as in like everyone should be like crazy risk seeking and somehow that's the good thing. And I think at different phases in people's lives or different like what they've gone through personal experiences, failed startups, whatever it is, I think it's totally like normal to like acknowledge what's happening and what you want to do next. And I don't think there's anything like for granted, like you just keep failing at startups and suddenly one will inevitably blow up. Like, I think you just have, like, I think there is a lot of value in de-risking as well at times. So what that means, going and working for a, like, I don't know, bigger company, startup, like working for, I don't know, Uber, Dropbox, Facebook, like companies that you admire and you think you can learn a lot from, whatever those companies may be. I think there is an insane amount of value in also doing that. So this isn't a binary, like, hey, everyone here should leave today and start a company tomorrow and drop out of Princeton and everything's going to work out fantastically well. Like, obviously not. That's probably not. It may happen to one of you. It's probably not going to happen to the rest. So I think the biggest thing is everyone's going to take a different path to like whatever they want to get to, and it's totally fine to take like whatever your path is. And if that means like working at a larger company because you think like that's what you really enjoy and you learn a lot for a while, like that makes perfect sense as well. So I don't think it's a like, just go out and do the scariest thing possible tomorrow.
Great. Questions?
Several times it's come up the importance of having teams to get things done. Bob, you met co-founders, so in what contexts did you meet those co-founders, and how do you go about meeting people who can help you with whatever you're trying to accomplish?
I met mine all in college. I don't even remember like that, was it like a bar or a class? Like I literally, like if you ask like where was the point you met it, you know how you probably forget the friends you make in college where like that first moment of meeting them was. I do think you'll hear the narrative of don't start businesses with friends if you want to keep them as friends. I think there's an element of truth to that, but there's a component of having friends that's really nice is perspective, essentially like this dual relationship. Like when you're to the point of personal life and company life, if you turn that company into such an all-consuming bubble without the ability to sort of laugh at it, I mean, literally, and this applies whether you're in that early group of a couple people founding it, or whether you've got 160 employees and you're in a meeting and you kind of have to just like make fun of the ridiculousness of discussing whatever abstraction of humanity that exists in retargeting curves or something, yeah. Right? Like, I think having friends as an ability to as a way of kind of acknowledging the wins and sort of laughing at the losses has been really valuable to me. But again, it's like I have one experience, and there's so many differences that coins. I do think it's harder to have as to build trust. Post-college, it's harder to build trust and friendship, to build friendships and then start companies with them and build that trust quickly. I think in college, it's kind of your last frontier of those sort of personal relationships forming, and probably your deepest ones. And just in my experience, post-college, you're either work friends or friends, and it seems, I don't know if that's very personal. I feel like I found it harder to make. I still have my collegiate contingent.
From my perspective, the word networking is allergic to, and it's never really been a formal part of my career acceleration. So, but I will say I had a boss for a long time who was just a natural people person and just was constantly getting advice from people. And sometimes, to the point where I'm kind of are you really asking that person for advice? They have no idea. But just the openness, I mentioned that. I think the other trick, which is a silly trick, but it works, is no one's ever not replied to an email that says, I think you're amazing. I'm a huge fan of yours. You're brilliant. I'd love to chat with you. You'll get a good response rate to that email. The response rate, you won't get a good response rate to, will you be my mentor? Will you help me? Everyone has too much on their plate, and it's not that they don't want to help you, but they're probably not doing a good enough job helping their own team and their own employees. But flattery works, and I think especially around partnership or things in business, leading with what that other person cares about, or really just ask them to talk about what they're passionate about, and you apply that to how that can help you. Don't put that on someone else. For me, that was a lot of probably the relationships that I feel like I built early on in my career that have led to other interesting things, partnerships, job opportunities, things that pop up was not me asking for anything other than share your wisdom around what you're doing and let me learn from that, and I will make that relevant to my career path. And I think sometimes people think they go about it the other way, and I think it just, you kind of are noise, I think, sometimes in that approach. So flattery, it works every time, I promise.
Great. So, any questions you want to ask them? Anybody else?
I can also,
I'll have one.
you
Go ahead.
I was going to say, with on the co-founder subject, I think that the less planned that type of interaction is, the more of a result you're going to have. For me, I was literally just chatting with a buddy of mine when we were in our senior year, spring semester, about this problem I had encountered. I was talking to him a little bit about how there's been this serendipitous kind of series of events where I was in Madrid and had this awful apartment experience where I came back from Spain with no money for me or my roommates, and everyone was very upset. Parents were crying. It was dramatic. But you had this happen, and then to then help a Princeton graduate with, he said, can you come to New York and help me find an apartment, and have that go so terribly. I was just telling him about it, and he kind of said, I'm really passionate about marketing, campus marketing. And so he ended up, I co-founded the company with Belton Baker in 2010, and he ended up starting our brand ambassador program, which is in less use now, but during 2010 to 2014, we had up to 1,000 ambassadors at 100 campuses. And so I think that just having conversations about your ideas with friends is a good idea. And frankly, every partner I've had that's a friend is no longer my partner, to go back to, I think, what Luke said about, starting with friends. But I also wouldn't be here if I hadn't been their partner at one point in time. So, I've lost a few really good friends over the business, but it had to be them. If I hadn't been collaborating with them, there wouldn't have been a website, there wouldn't have been a launch. I had another partner after that who's a good friend who helped me turn it into a full-service New York City brokerage. And then I had another partner recently come in who just left, who helped us build corporate relationships with 50 of the biggest employers in New York City. So now you get a next step voucher when you get an offer from any of those employers. They've kind of come along, hopped on the train for every step of the way. And I was reluctant at first because I also was told, don't do this with friends, things will go wrong. But, you don't have to be lifelong partners, but maybe there's a way you guys can start something together and have that passion perspective. I remember one last thing when we first started, we weren't sure how it was going. And then that was in May, and then in July we got invited onto the set of Bloomberg to talk about it, which I thought was shocking that they wanted us to come speak about it. And I remember after the interview, which was like a 3-minute interview,
we went to a friend's rooftop, grabbed a 6-pack of beers and looked over the city and just got so excited. I mean, that moment probably left me motivated for like 5 or 6 more months. The fact that I did have someone there who was a friend of mine, who I trusted, who had been with me from the second the idea came about, there's something about that makes it powerful. And if you read up on Casper, you'll see that they've had incredible success as a group of friends with their concept. So I think it's worth exploring, but expect possible downsides long term with friends.
Great, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, question.
Can you guys talk a little bit about when, this doesn't apply to Maureen as much, but when you guys were starting your companies, when you realized that it wasn't just like a temporary thing, that it could be like an actual thing? I know that Luke went through an accelerator, but did you guys, how important it is like personal connections and things like that in finding funding?
I get a quick answer.
Yeah.
The second you get other people's money into your business,
Full-time.
yeah, there's an integrity thing, right? If you go in, let's be candid about asking for money with investors when you don't have anything, it's faking it, right? It's a performative experience. I think as soon as you take people's money and you know where that money came from, and I think it's particularly important with angels, where that's usually an individual spending their money that they could have spent on their family, rather than an institution, you get real. And that our first company, one of the sadder things is our first company, we gave back, say maybe 60% or something of the funding that we raised to those investors. We gave them an option to invest in Casper. We're very, very apologetic. None of them invested in Casper. If they'd invested $10,000, it'd be worth $10 million now. So a lot of it didn't go that well as a process, but having that experience and giving back money for me even further solidified how real this stuff is. It's sad that money is so formative, but it really is.
Yeah, I think there is something very real about raising. You're not in the startup to raise money. Then raising is obviously just a means to whatever it is. But there is something very real with these inflection points where you raise a certain amount of capital, and I don't know if it's because there's sometimes publicity around it as well, and sometimes it's actually just looking at a bank account. The first time we raised a $2.5 million seed round, and just looking at a bank account, being shit, this is nuts. There's $2.5 million in this bank account. And I'm sitting on my mobile phone, Bank of America logged in, and just looking at this number and being all right, I guess we can spend this some way.
But you're smiling.
So it's a great feeling. But there are definitely inflection points where make it feel real. I would say you always feel to anyone who's thinking about it or raising money, it's always a little intimidating. I don't think there's any scenario when you're starting out where you think wait, is what I'm doing going to be the thing that makes it, or am I going to be able to raise that money? We had we do this speaker series at Handy where we get outside founders in or people, and we had the Evernote founder, he's not on the CEO, come in and speak. And he was just the biggest thing founders go through is you go your whole life feeling like you're an imposter. You're somehow faking it constantly. You're faking it when you went out to raise money, you're leading a team of 150 people, and you're shit, this is kind of crazy. You feel like you're faking it. And that's normal. I think that starts early on and doesn't really end. And he was he's been CEO for 10 years, I think, of Evernote. Phil Libben, he's fantastic, and now he's an investor as well. But his big thing was you constantly feel like an imposter. So it starts to feel real, but it also starts to feel shit, how's is this really happening? Am I the right person to keep pushing this forward?
Yeah. Is there a question?
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone wants to ask one.
Just made it too high stakes.
So-
Too high pressure to be the final question.
I would say the final question is that, if you had to give one advice to the students as you come away, what would that one be? Tough one. Yeah. How about you? You can't look at him and say something.
I'll say, so we have a bunch, I can speak from the perspective of we have a few, I had the luxury in some ways of just there are lots of people who work at Handy. I think about some of the people who are just I just know I'm gonna kill it some way or the other in their career, and I think about what sets them apart from some of the, hopefully everyone's smart and committed, but there's always these like superstars, and I think some of the common things that if I put myself is, one, they're extremely intelligent. I think you guys check the box. I'm pretty sure all of you do. Like, it's not like they're geniuses or something. They're just smart, and I'm sure you guys check the box on that. And then the other two things is I think the passion is real. Like, they're genuinely like curious people who want to learn, and they come out of college. And I'm talking about the people who are like young and straight out of college, not someone. So people in your shoes, they genuinely want to learn. And so that's why I think choosing a career where you genuinely care is important, because you can see through. People will pick up on that so fast. And then the third thing is they work incredibly hard. I think there's no substitute, like when you're out of college, for like just working really, really hard. Like, I don't think there's like, don't put yourself in a position where I think you're working like 9 to 5 and you're happy with that. Like, you're not doing yourself any favors. Like, trust me, you'll have enough time, like, hopefully to figure all the like work-life balance. And I'm not saying go crazy and like, but like, you should want to work really, really hard, and that will take you such a long way. Whether it's for yourself or for someone else, people can pick up on those things really fast, and you'll get rewarded like really well for those things.
I'd say whether you do startups or you work for a company or work anywhere, I'd say like unleash your inner cockiness, because if it bites you in the butt, you'll still, after that moment, like if that was a math equation, after that moment, after biting you in the butt, you'd be better off than were you not unleashing that cockiness beforehand. So whatever career it is, there's obviously moments where that can hurt you, but if you never, the point at which to unleash it, in my one-person experience, is to go straight out, like out the gate. You know, I mean, if you don't have reason to be so with your current experience and the school you went to, you know, then who does? I think the sad thing is when I use cockiness, but I think it has a clearer negative connotation. You could say confidence, but I think you almost have to embrace the sort of abrasiveness of that to kind of like fully embrace it. And I certainly did. My co-founder certainly did. We definitely got slapped around it a couple of times, but we learned the hard way, and it was a better way. I know that's a platitude, but it was good for us.
Mine's probably really simple. Just take a risk. Move to a different city, move away, don't like do something different. You can always go back home. I mean, when I graduated Stanford, it was like everyone was staying right there in Silicon Valley. There were a million jobs, like the natural thing to do. And I was like, I'm gonna be the one that goes to New York and works for Google in New York. It was kind of a hedge because I figured I could just go back if I wanted to. So it was, you know, not that bold of a move, but it was different, and it totally changed the course of my career that I made that decision to choose New York. My whole family was in the Bay Area. So I think that is the time to really embrace those kind of changes, and they're very easy to undo. Like, you can go get a job in any city, you'll have an amazing background and resume just by nature of being here. So you have that opportunity to take those risks, and as life goes on, it gets trickier to navigate that all, and you don't want to miss those you know, paths not taken early on.
Yeah, I mean, Luke's definitely not lying, because I met with Luke and his co-founders 3 years ago.
Yeah,
3 years ago we had lunch, and they came in like so cocky. I mean, it was unbelievable. They were like, "We are going to revolutionize how you sleep." And I was like, "Okay, I'm all ears."
Yeah.
And so now all of our clients get free Casper mattresses. I'm just kidding. All of our clients get discounted Casper mattresses. But no, I mean, he's definitely right. I think, and now they made $100 million last year, right?
Yeah.
That's public information. So, but I mean, that was a conversation we had like 2 years ago. They made $100 million this year. So he's not lying when he says that confidence is key. But for me, my dad actually was a Princeton class of 1964, and I was here 2 years ago for his 50th reunion. And I'm just going to repeat something he told me, which is that, and he was someone who went into investment banking out of Princeton, and I think he would have rather been a professor, to be honest. But he really regretted, as I was growing up, he really regretted the route he had gone. And he had gone into the route mainly because that was just what people were doing. And I think the one thing he just kept saying to me, I don't know if it was a daily or weekly basis, but Blair, please choose something that you love, because there's going to come a point in time where you're sitting next to someone and you're competing for excellence, you're competing for success, and if they love it more than you do, they're going to win. They're going to stay there longer and work harder. They're going to be better at it. So really pick something that you love and don't mess around with that one idea, because that's what's going to determine if you succeed or not. So unlock, and another way of saying that is like unlock your inner genius. Like everyone in this room has something that they could be the best in the world at, but you need to figure out what that is as soon as possible and start applying that one little skill. For me, it happened to be a leader and kind of to run a company, to start a company, and particularly in real estate. I moved around a lot as a kid, so starting a real estate company for me and helping people find their homes is kind of like a therapeutic process almost. So I kind of unlocked my inner whatever intelligence I have. I was able to unlock that and apply it out in the real world. And the last thing I'll say is that time is definitely of the essence. I think when I graduated college, I thought that I just had like all this time and it would just keep going, and you kind of realize how short life is when you get into your mid-late 20s. So don't do, as someone said earlier, don't do something just like 2 or 3 years to like try it out. Obviously, if you get a great job for 3 years, go take it, but you have to have urgency. You have to have tons and tons of urgency, because time flies. You need to accomplish things fast. So come hard right out the gate, unlock that inner genius, and find a way to do something you love, where you can also be successful.
Well, thank you, Blair, Maureen, Umang, and Luke. Thank you for coming all the way here and sharing your experiences with us.